everybody, welcome to Build. I'm your host, Brittany Jones-Cooper. In her new book, Rethink Love, Monica Berg uses humor and honesty to provide long-lasting solutions to improve your romantic relationship. From managing your ego to learning how to fight, Berg provides readers with steps to being the one, attracting the one, and becoming one. Welcome, Monica Berg.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
First, thanks for joining us on a Monday morning. I'm single and dating in New York, so I read your book this weekend, and I got some really, I think, useful nuggets. So did you write it for people? Who did you write it for, I guess?
I wrote it for everyone. I meet with a lot of people. I counsel different people, and the number one struggle or issue that they had was the relationship. Either they were in one that wasn't fulfilling, or they wanted to elevate it, or they were searching for the one, or they really weren't loving themselves. So I started to think about this, and I started meeting with couples. And there were common themes that they all had. And so I started to do a lot of research. So this book is for everyone, because at the end of the day, we're all searching for love.
Yeah, definitely. And you are the Chief Communications Officer for the Kabbalah International Center, right?
Yes.
So what does that role entail for you?
Well, it's evolved over the years. I've been at the Kabbalah Centre for a very long time. So it's really about getting out information on Kabbalah, which is tools that give people the ability to transform their lives so that you expand your consciousness and that you really live a happy, fulfilled life. So it's everything that falls under that umbrella, which is quite broad.
Yeah. And it's broad, but there are some specific rules about love in Kabbalah that you kind of infuse throughout the book. So how do those principles inform how you write about and approach love?
Well, the one thing that I think is really important to mention in relationships, when you have the ego in the middle, which is there unless people really make a choice to keep it at bay, it can direct where the relationship goes. So a big part of the study of Kabbalah and the principles is about removing the ego and becoming more humble. And that requires a lot of work and effort and, again, consciousness. So I have different principles for each and every chapter that kind of give you that awareness. And then from there, you can make the steps that you need.
And we're going to get into those different steps in a minute, but I want to point out that as the wife of a rabbi, you have attended over 500 weddings?
Yes.
That is insane. So do you now have the ability to observe a wedding and be like, they're going to make it or they're not going to make it?
I do. I don't want to sound like, oh, but, after you have sat in on 500, and not just that, I'm at the beginning stages of the relationship, like maybe when they're dating, and then leading up to the wedding, and then the week of, or sometimes the doubts that creep in, the wedding itself, and then also intimately involved after. And you can definitely feel the difference in when couples come together and they are really connected and they're very vulnerable and authentic with each other, and the relationships that are kind of starting on a different foundation.
And that foundation is really important, and you sort of break it down in the book to the first step really being about yourself.
Correct.
And focusing on what you're putting out. So can you take us through that philosophy of the work kind of having to be done with yourself before you can really share it with someone else?
So I wrote the book in 3 parts, and I also, and I think that sometimes people who are in relationships think that the first part might just be for single people, and it's not. So the first is, and I devoted 9 chapters to this part, right? It's called Me, and it's how to really create a relationship with yourself, which is going to help inform all of your other relationships. Because at the end of the day, if you don't know who you are, if you don't know what you believe, if you don't love yourself, if you haven't found your authenticity, then what are you able to really offer another? And I also encourage people, whether they're in their 70s or they're divorced or widowed or 20 or 40, it doesn't matter. This fundamental step, even if it was overlooked, it needs to be revisited. Because again, if the longest and most important relationship you'll ever have is the one you have with yourself.
And I know a lot of companies have mission statements, and you actually encourage individuals to come up with their own credo, their own sort of personal beliefs, and actually write them down. So can you take us through like what that credo is supposed to be and why it's important to sort of have that sense of self like written down?
Yes, I love this. I came across it when I read this book called In This I Believe. And I think that one of the biggest struggles we have is that we don't know what we believe. And when you don't know what you believe, then everybody else's beliefs will impact you, right? So, and also, it also informs who you choose. If you don't know what you really think, you might pick somebody that 10 years later, you're like, well, I don't really know what I saw in that person. I'm not really into them anymore. So your credo is really about something that you've come to believe, that you've come to know. For instance, my credo is in change, there's great power. And I came to that. And again, I call myself a change junkie. Now I have a necklace that says change. I wasn't born that way. I hated change. And like most of us, we crave change, but we're afraid of change because we don't want to be uncomfortable. And change is very uncomfortable. But it was thrust upon me when I had my second child, and I found out a few hours after his birth, he was born with Down syndrome. So in that moment, again, the shock, the terror, the fear, after I went through all of those stages and the grief, I had a choice to make. And I came to it that in change, there's great power, because I didn't want to be a person that feared all of those things. And I didn't know who he would become. And I didn't know who I would become from having a child who had special needs. And embracing that and really changing the way I thought about life changed everything. So when you have your credo, it's kind of like it helps you navigate. And it helps you understand that you do know who you are and that you can rely on yourself to make good choices.
So change is power, but it's one of the most difficult things to accept in your life. So what is maybe one way in terms of love that people can change the way they view love or feeling deserving of it even?
Well, you hit on a key point. I find that often people have conflicting beliefs, right, or desires. They say, I want love, and I really want a relationship, but I don't think I deserve a relationship. You can't have those two thoughts because they compete against one another. So it's first to find your false beliefs and call them out, and then from there you can create new ones. And you can create change. So first you have to see, what is it that I believe? Are these my belief systems? Or were they impressed upon me when I was a child? Is it from my mother, my father, the relationships I saw growing up? And do I really want them to be mine anymore? And from that space, you can create new ones.
I love in the book, I think you wrote that, what was it? Conditional love is a birthright, or unconditional love is a birthright. And I thought that was really powerful because I think a lot of people feel like they need to earn that love. And you're like, no, you deserve that.
Everybody deserves to be loved just by simply being here. In a few chapters before the unconditional love chapter, I read about authenticity, because authenticity is that you believe you are deserving of everything, even though you're imperfect, right? Most people think I'm going to be perfect, and when I'm perfect, which is the dumbest word ever to exist, I think we should erase that from the dictionary. There's no such thing, and it's impossible. But people believe that when I'm perfect, then I'm going to attract the love, and you can waste a whole life like that.
Well, that's ego, right? And you write kind of about ego and how it can get in the way and how it can often be our biggest enemy. So how, when you're in a relationship, you care about this person, how do you work on being aware of your ego and channeling like the consciousness part?
So the way that in Kabbalah especially we speak about ego is the one, I want to be right, or you won the fight last time, so now it's my turn to win, wants to be the smartest one in the room, wants to have the last word. It's that constant push for recognition. Look at me, see me. It gets us in a lot of trouble. Now, it gets us in trouble anyway outside of relationships, but if that's the energy that's pervasive in the relationship, imagine how that's going to be. You stop being friends somewhere along the line. And when you stop being friends, and you stop appreciating one another, when you stop appreciating one another, you feel like you don't love one another. People don't really break up because there's no love. They just can't access the love anymore. So first you have to be able to say, okay, this relationship or my happiness and my future is bigger than my ego, is more important to me than my ego. And from that space, you can slowly chip away at it. But it's going to be painful in the moment because it's going to feel really uncomfortable. Again, there's that word, right? To change the parts of us that need to change, there has to be that little aspect of discomfort. Yeah. Because nothing worthwhile is easy, right?
Totally. And you have been engaged with a lot of couples, like talking to them, right, through their relationships.
Correct.
Do you think that is maybe the most useful tool for people to become more aware of their ego and what they're bringing into a relationship, is going to talk therapy with their partner?
We can talk about all kinds of things, and it's not going to make a difference unless the consciousness is that, what's the goal? Our goal has to be the same, right? That we both realize the ego is in the middle and it's not serving us. And from that space, then yes, you can work through it. But first, it's about a consciousness shift.
That sounds hard.
You know, it's interesting because I did these workshops with couples, and at first, you know, the men didn't really want to do it. And I thought about it, and I think it's because it sounds like so much work. I mean, we always hear that, right? Relationships are work. But the thing is, anything in life is work, right? You wouldn't go and work so hard in school and get an education and find your dream job, and then once you landed it, you'd stop trying. Or people who, you know, work so hard, let's say, to get pregnant, and they need to go through IVF or whatever. Once they do, they're not going to take care of themselves for 9 months, or the baby after it comes out, right? It doesn't make sense. However, in relationships, we think that the hard work is before. It's hard to find the one, jade dating, double dating, blind dating. I mean, we put ourselves through such discomfort, and then when we find the one, especially when we're married and we have the house and, you know, we feel safe and comfortable, we stop putting energy and effort. So it's not that it has to be hard work, but it has to be work like anything else that's worthwhile.
And, you know, sex and intimacy is a huge part of any relationship. I thought it was interesting the way you talk about sex and the 12 days in Kabbalah where couples pretty much end up abstaining from sex and how that can increase intimacy. So can you talk about that principle a little bit and the ways you've seen it positively impact relationships?
I know. I really wanted to write about that because at first people are like, oh, I don't know how this is working out, right? You're supposed to be together more and not less. The beauty of this is, though, it creates a mindfulness and an appreciation. So, you know, and it's not that you actually have less sex, because in the rest of the 12 days, you can have sex, you know, 3 times a day if you want. It's about that there's that separation. And then when you come back together, it's kind of like you're together for the first time again. There's a preparation, there's appreciation, there's an excitement leading to that. And that's a beautiful experience, because if you don't actually take time to appreciate the things that are always available, you lose it. Yeah.
When it comes to courtship and dating, do you have any rules on sex and when it should be introduced to a relationship?
Yeah, I definitely have opinions. I think I also write about this too. I think it's really important the first time you do it, what age you are at, where you are in terms of your relationship with yourself, in terms of your love for yourself, because it can get very complicated, especially when sex is in the mix. And I think more than anything, we can get confused by how we feel when we're intimate too early on. I think that be friends first and foremost, create that real connection that has a deep foundation, and make sure the things that are really important line up first before you become really intimate, because it just confuses everything. And I think that you give parts of yourself to different partners that you don't necessarily get back.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last thing we'll talk about before we go to audience is fighting. And, you know, you see couples that don't fight and you're like, oh, that's good. But you're saying that's not always the best thing if you're not fighting. Right?
I think that you should be very scared. I remember a few years ago, my kids came home, their friends' parents were getting divorced, and they were sharing that the friends were saying they were so confused because they never saw their parents fight ever. And then one day they came home and said, we're getting divorced, right? And that's really scary for a child and confusing. If you're passionate about something, you're going to fight about it, or you're going to have a heated argument or conversation. It shows that you actually care about what's happening. The key, though, is that you have to agree on a fighting style. So if I'm a screamer, which I was when I got married, I'm from a Middle Eastern family, and my husband is the silent type, which he was, we're gonna have bigger problems, because then when we would fight, I would get really, really angry. I don't remember what I was angry about anymore, but then now I was really angry. So that obviously wasn't productive, and it wasn't going to work long term. So we agreed on a style that worked for both of us, and it takes some practice. But then once you do, actually or not, the fights never, and I also say this too, they should never go below the belt. There's some things that should never be said or done.
That's good advice across the board, too.
Yeah,
Even if you're not in a relationship, it's like, just keep it fair.
Right. Well, if you say something you can never take out, like, I hate your mother, that's going to get you in trouble forever.
Even if it's true, guys,
Right.
don't say it. We have a couple questions. The first one, Rachel.
Hi, Monica.
Hi.
Thank you. So as a woman, as a mother, and as a wife, there's so many things that us women, you know, handle and give energy to, you know, in our nature. How do you find the space and the time to have a relationship with yourself when you're busy, you know, and being true to that relationship with yourself and what you want? You know, it seems like, wow, you really need to designate time for that and focus.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's more about awareness, and it starts there. So for instance, and when I started to have a relationship with myself, I was really in a very dark place, and I really had no choice. I had anorexia, and I was either going to die and starve myself to death or really learn to love myself. So it wasn't really, I was kind of like, okay, this is urgent and immediate. But it really took the time to get emotional feedback. So if I would make a choice in the day that I would feel bad about, or feel like I'm guilty, I should have done this, or maybe I should be there with my husband or later with the kids. Instead, I was like, okay, what is it that you desire? Where is it coming from? I became kind of like an inspector where I would gather data and information of my beliefs, of my thoughts and my desires, and I would allow myself just to feel that and to want, right? I write about the shame of wanting in my book too. We have such shame in even saying what we want. So I started to erase all those false belief systems, really start to be self-interested, because people think that it's about self-care, like pampering yourself. It's not. It's about really being interested in who you are as a person and offering love and nurturing from that space. And when you do, and you're managing everything else, you'll always come back to you because it's a warm, safe place. So throughout the day when I'm making decisions and choices, I'll check in with myself, am I spending my time the way I want to? Does this feel right? Do I feel good about that choice? If not, okay, maybe I should do it differently next time. So you start to have this dialogue with yourself that's really kind of amazing and comforting. And then it's not a choice anymore. It's like a necessity.
And Danielle?
That's me. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
Because you helped so many people in your beliefs and your writing, was there a specific moment that made you want to start helping others?
I think that, I don't believe in pain. I don't think people should suffer. And I grew up in a home where there's like a lot of, again, Middle Eastern, like a lot of suffering kind of mentality. And then when I started to have my own experiences in life that were painful, I would work through them and not just, work them out and kind of move past. I really worked through them and was changed through them. It really gave me the desire to want to help other people, because seeing them in pain created pain for me. So nothing makes me more happy or fulfilled than being able to offer people anything that I have learned, or especially from my hardships. And then seeing it work for them is the greatest gift. So it's not really an option. I don't think I could exist here and just be about me.
But in sharing your story, I think you do help a lot of people connect to the principles of Kabbalah. And one thing that you explore is the idea of soulmates. Mm-hmm. And so take us through your stance on that, because I feel like that's a topic that a lot of people like to debate, but you seem pretty sure in your beliefs on soulmates.
The thing with soulmates, and that's why I've designated a chapter for that too, people often get so stuck in the word. I need to find my soulmate. And they believe that a soulmate relationship is one that is problem-free, that looks like in the movies, like close to perfection, right? And then they're with their soulmates. In fact, soulmate relationships are ones that actually serve as a mirror to you. They push you to transform, to grow, to make you better, and vice versa. There's some discomfort there. It's not easy breezy. But the place where your souls connect are aligned in a way where you're both working towards the same purpose and goal. And it's a love that's elevated. So I think that, and then people say, well, is there more than one soulmate? Because again, they want to make sure they're with the right person. And if they're with the right person, then it's worth it. But if it's not, maybe I'm going to meet somebody on the plane that I like a little bit better, or, in transit, or my trip to Paris, whatever it is. So soulmate relationships are the ones that really make you change, grow, evolve. And there's different levels. Like if you really work on yourself and you know who you are and you know what you believe, imagine you're going to attract a relationship that is at that space, versus if you're just operating with your five senses, what they look like or how they make you feel or what you think they offer you. That's a different kind of love, and it's going to be a different relationship. Yeah.
Have you heard of this new show, Love is Blind?
I'm not sure. Tell me about that one. Somebody, I think maybe.
I would be interested.
Where they don't see each other?
They don't see each other. So basically they talk through a wall for a number of days, and these couples end up falling in love.
Yeah, I want to be all over this show.
See, I feel like
I know.
This is, can you please come back and we can break this down? Because it is the idea that you meet somebody and you're talking to them and you're connecting without all the superficial stuff. And these people are falling in love through a wall because they're souls are connecting or whatever it is. It's something bigger than them.
Yes, and somebody did ask me this. That's how it got brought up. The thing is this, I do believe though that while that's amazing because what they're doing is they're using their higher part to really their soul, but I think that there is an important part to see each other's eyes and to connect also to the soul, because there is a reason that we also use our senses. Why should we limit one? It's just that where do you put the importance? The importance needs to be on the soul level, but I think that the 1% is also important.
You've already made the show better. Now we just need them to have a little viewing.
A little hole.
Just a little hole to like look at each other.
Yeah,
but they
I want to go on that show as a host.
Please check it out. Come back. We'll unpack all of it. But in the meantime, you've given us a lot of things to think about. And I love that, like you said, the first real hefty portion of this book is about yourself and the work that you should do and want to do to find love.
So worthwhile.
Definitely worthwhile. So thank you for joining us today.
You.
And guys, Rethink Love is available wherever books are sold. Put your hands together for Monica Berg.
Thank you.